glad to have you back. And if you're just joining us, well, this is Nigeria Decides. And next up discussion is the Assets Declaration. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria amended requires public officers to declare their assets and liabilities. Do all public officers declare? Well, joining us to discuss all of these and more is Babasola Adegbuyi, YPP governorship candidate of Ogun State, as well as Adeniyi Kunnu. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
It's an interesting topic we are shifting our focus to now.
Yes, it is.
When we are talking about asset declaration by public officers, what do we necessarily mean? Because there have been instances where the picture doesn't seem so clear to the public officers as to what exactly they are to declare.
Well, I believe strongly, and to paraphrase what asset declaration dwells upon, it dwells upon all that you've acquired in terms of money as well as property. So if you've got houses, what they may not actually count to make it a little bit jocular happens to be your furniture and bed. But if you have any amount of houses, you have to declare that that's what you have. If you've got 10 bank accounts, you have to talk about the bank accounts, the names, where perhaps the accounts are domiciled, as well as the amount that you have in those bank accounts. Oftentimes, they may not actually query the source of those things, except of course there is reason to. If for instance you are on a salary of about 750,000 naira and you've worked for 12 years, and even if you save 750,000 naira for 12 years, but in your account there's about maybe 200,000 US dollars, you may really need to ask or answer certain questions. So basically what it's aimed at doing is to first of all put a check on people who are appointees of government so that they will not get involved in anything called sleaze and enrich themselves. So it is very important to state here that anybody who holds public office, appointments, elective, must declare your asset because that is statutory.
Right upon assumption of office.
Yes, of course.
Now, the mandate of the asset declaration, that's the CCB here in Nigeria, is to establish and maintain a high standard of public morality in the conduct of government business and to ensure that the actions and behaviors of public officers conform to the highest standards of public morality and accountability. Do we see this in our public offices over the years? Have we ever seen a trace of that? And maybe we could mention names.
As far as I'm concerned, we have not. The CCB actually came in sometimes in 1979, if I remember very well. And as he mentioned, one of the reasons why asset declaration is necessary is to check the excesses of public officers, which of course you can check in the 5th schedule of the Nigerian Constitution. But the truth is this. The Constitution asks that you declare your assets 3 months after you take office or immediately. And after that, 4 years after. The question is, what happens between the 4 years? Does the CCB go back and do the appropriate thing to be sure that the public officers has not enriched himself while in office within that period? If you check the schedule very well, you will discover that what is expected of the officers, if the CCB strictly adhere to the Constitution, most of these governors, the public officers, they will not be in the office. You get? But we're in a country that anything goes. Everybody is only interested in, at the beginning, nobody is interested of what happens at the end.
Adeniyi, now, one of the issues I find quite interesting is the fact that some of these declarations are held as weapons to use against the, should I say, opponent or coerce the individual when you want to get something from them. There are some of our political elite who understand that, well, there might be discrepancies or figures not necessarily tallying. They've done due investigation. But why do we always wait till a particular time before we now say, well, it's time to take this bomb off?
Well, to a large extent, it is the nature of our dirty politics. On the sidelines, self-serving kind of politics. And on the third stage, it's devious of many persons themselves, because you have to say it as it is. If we talk about people coming into offices, for instance, I want to talk about a number of those who are with the ruling party now, and I want to talk about Godswill Akpabio of Akwa Ibom State. I can say here that what my friend mentioned is very, very apt, that he was there for 8 years, and he looks to the world a better man financially than he came in. What has the CCB done in terms of the responsibilities on its shoulders as government has deemed it fit? Obanikoro traversed political parties. Is frolicking with the ruling party as we speak. And I dare say that he has not also been examined by the self-serving CCB. I say it here without any sense of doubt that it is dirty politics when you use institutions of government to fight political enemies. And that actually jettisons the purpose for which such institutions were established, if at all they are functioning.
I just want to take you a little bit backwards, because
Yes,
in the mandate of the CCB, we talk about morality, which you are also saying, you know, the issue of morality here, is that supposed to be the CCB's job? Yes, they're supposed to check, always check. They're an institution which is supposedly unbiased, supposedly. The issue of morality, is this necessarily their job, or is that not the job of the person who's in that office to be of a certain moral standing? And should it be personal or obligatory, especially if, you know, you're seeking for office? Should you not be a man of high standing if you are declaring, for example, you're declaring that you have 10 cows at the beginning of, and then maybe you have done 10 salads, or let's say 5 salads in the middle of your, and then you have maybe 10 more cows added. It should be your moral code to declare.
Not at all. Let's say it as it is. The tendency for anybody who holds public office to violate the privileges or to violate certain things, the tendencies are always there. And it's the world over, it's not peculiar to Nigeria. But it is just that we're operating at a level that that reminds me of the dark days of Europe, really, when Europe really doesn't have any letters, where people couldn't read, where only the priests have access to books of knowledge. Because if in the age of supposed advanced civilization and widespread knowledge, it actually baffles my sensibilities and my tact that people are acting the way they act. You're talking about morality here. If you go into public offices, you should have the consciousness that high moral standards are expected, because immediately you hold exalted offices, you become an exemplary figure. And let me say this, such public offices are leadership positions, and leaders are meant to drive initiative and discourses. And that is why much is expected of the persons who occupy such offices. On the reverse angle, because a man has remained fallible since the word go, you need to have checks in place so that when the man begins to fall out of line, he remembers that there are agencies. So it's a two-way responsibility for the institutions to checkmate and for the individual to stay conscious as long as he or she occupies such offices.
But these institutions, I'm sorry to cut in, have not necessarily been living up to, because if it's every 4 years or you find a discrepancy, that's if you're working, you will definitely see these discrepancies. But why do we only see the CCT or the CCB cry foul when it's maybe leading up to an election, or maybe when a certain person is out of love with the sitting government? And this is ditto for any government, by the way.
What I said at the penultimate session you brought me on board was that most of them operate for self-serving reasons. The same Danladi Umar, who sits as the helmsman of the CCT at the moment, has dipped his hand in the cookie jar and successfully removed his hand from the cookie jar, and is still there. During the civilization of the Romans, immediately something dishonorable is associated with you, you commit suicide so that your honor remains intact. And up until this moment, because the British people were essentially colonized by the Romans, as well as the Anglo-Celts and the Jutes, you'd find out that immediately somebody in advanced civilization, it's peculiar with the British people, the person resigned. So that is the symbolic nature of the suicide committed during the Roman conquest. The picture is we don't understand what honor is. We lack ideas. Majority of people will lack ideas of the expectations of holding public offices. And because we do not see such offices as where people have actually delegated their power to us so that we take responsibility for a certain juncture and return to them, it is why we continue to abuse it. The punitive measures are not there and many other things that will checkmate those that occupy such offices.
Now, Babasola, if we take a flashback to the incident of false asset declaration that was leveled against the current president of the Senate, Bukola Saraki, some people that felt, well, the treatment had a little bit of massaging and maneuvering and politicking and a whole lot more. Now we have another one on our hands looking at the CJN. Now, are you also impressed by the responses given where it says, well, the funds that were found in his account were from tradings in the forex market and other investments he has accrued or gotten returns from?
What does the CCB Constitution, what does the law say? You are not allowed to be involved in anything trade investment.